Jack, Subject 0, Jacqueline Knott, Jennifer. All names belong to one highly complex and beautifully fascinating character from the video game franchise Mass Effect. Appearing first in Mass Effect 2, Jack quickly became a character of great debate. Some players were immediately put off by Jack's, shall we say, abrasiveness.
Shit, you sound like a pussy.
While others were intrigued by it. Born and modified to be a weapon, Jack is one of the most powerful and most notorious human criminals in the Mass Effect universe. Whatever side of the love or hate Jack aisle you fall on, you have to admit that she is among one of the most interesting characters in all of Mass Effect. Upon meeting her for the first time at the ripe old age of 11 back in 2010, when I played Mass Effect 2 for the first time, I was immediately taken by her. For personality reasons, I swear to God, it was just personality reasons. How can this ex-test subject turn criminal who is now this abrasive, all-powerful bitch be so compelling? Even back then, I was so interested in her character and tried to wrap my head around why she is the way that she is. What's the mental state of someone who was abducted as a baby and then forcibly augmented and tortured mentally and physically for her entire childhood? For someone who killed another human being as a kid, then went off to become a pirate, a vandal, and a murderer. And for someone who went through all of that and ended up becoming a teacher for children in the end. I absolutely love Jack's character arc from Mass Effect 2 to 3. And she is my constant romance option for nearly every replay of the series I've ever done. To me, her story is insanely compelling. Watching as the hardshell she puts up slowly crumbles throughout the games to reveal this kind and passionate person underneath is always satisfying to witness. So today, I want to do a deep dive into Jack's psyche and analyze her character in an attempt to truly understand what makes her tick. By the end of this video, I hope you'll understand why I believe Jack to be one of the best characters in Mass Effect. Abducted in 2165 by Cerberus, a human supremacist paramilitary group, Jennifer lost her name, her family, and her life. Seeing the potential for biotic abilities due to accidental exposure to Element 0 whilst still in the womb, Cerberus took Jennifer and then lied to her mother, saying her daughter died because of said exposure. As a quick aside, biotic powers, for those who don't know, is the ability some species in the Mass Effect universe possess that grant the user the ability to manipulate dark energy to increase or decrease the mass of an object. Biotics biologically generate a Mass Effect field for offensive capabilities, such as knocking enemies over from a distance, lifting them into the air, or creating gravitational vortexes, and defensive capabilities, such as protective barriers. Cerberus sent Jennifer to the Telton facility on the planet Pragia with the goal of enhancing the biotic potential in humans, no matter the risk. Given the name Subject 0 and eventually Jack, she was the focal point of all biotic enhancement research at the facility. It is unknown how many other kids were at the Telton facility, however, the others were merely fodder and expendable, all so that Jack could become more powerful. Essentially, any biotic enhancement that proved to be lethal were not applied to Jack. If the enhancements were found to be beneficial, then Jack was augmented. Throughout her childhood, Cerberus scientists tortured her physically and mentally in various experiments in order to see how pain and distress affect her biotic abilities. Most of the time, Jack was kept separate from the other children, with her room being behind soundproof and one-way glass. She could see and hear the other children, but they couldn't see or hear her. For hours on end, Jack would scream and beat on the window until her voice gave out, just trying to get their attention. This was yet another form of psychological torture forced on Jack by Cerberus. As Cerberus regularly killed the other children in various experiments solely designed to advance Jack's abilities, the other kids grew to despise her as the source of all of their suffering. Their hatred grew worse for her, as the only time they actually interacted with Jack was when the scientist forced the subjects into gladiator-style combat. The point of this combat was to monitor her biotic abilities, as well as condition her to love the act of killing. If Jack ever hesitated, the scientist would relentlessly shock her. If she fought and killed without a second thought, they would inject her with narcotics, hardwiring Jack's brain to associate the feeling of euphoria with the act of killing. Despite all of this torture and suffering Jack endured, it actually yielded great results, and she became one of the strongest human biotics in existence at a very young age. Eventually, having enough of all the pain and suffering, the other subjects rioted and attacked the guards, resulting in damage to the facility and Jack being freed. Jack's pent-up rage and sudden release from captivity caused her to fly into a blinding fury, nearly killing everybody in the facility, guards, scientists, and other subjects alike. Jack would steal a shuttle and escape off Pragia, where she would be picked up by a passing freighter. Rather than helping her, the crew used her before selling her off into slavery. In the years following her escape, Jack went on to live a very violent, bloody, and crime-filled life. She did it all. Murder, assault, kidnapping, drugs, stealing, arson, piracy, theft, vandalism, and even joined a cult for some time. At some point, Jack discovers another Cerberus facility using biotic kids. She, understandably, attacks the facility and frees the kids. During their escape, Jack attempts to lure Cerberus away in order to buy the kids some time. She fought off Cerberus agents Maya Brooks and Kai Lang, but was eventually overrun by the Blue Suns mercenary group. Much to the chagrin of Cerberus, the Blue Suns mercs captured Jack and took her to their prison ship, Purgatory. Her time there was filled with even more turmoil and pain. During her captivity, she was attacked by a group of guards and prisoners who not only beat her relentlessly, but also had their way with her too. In the aftermath, after Jack healed, she personally, and very brutally, murdered every single one of her attackers. This incident led Warden Curl to realize Jack is not worth the Blue Sun's time or effort and offered to sell her back to Cerberus. In 2185, you, the player character, aka Commander Shepard, and his squad, now working for Cerberus, arrive at Purgatory to complete the buy and acquire Jack for assistance in their suicide mission to stop the alien race kidnapping human colonists known as the Collectors. The buy almost goes smoothly, but after Warden Curl attempts to capture and enslave Shepard, a fight breaks out and Jack escapes and goes on, guess what, a violent rampage. Confronting her and talking her down from killing Shepard, due to his Cerberus ties, Jack agrees to join the team and help stop the Collectors. Now, as many of you all know, Mass Effect is an RPG, meaning there are many potential paths to take and choices to be made. Depending on the player's choice, Jack can literally live or die and love or hate you. For this analysis, I'm going down the route of a complete Jack romance. That's really the only way the player gets to actually see all the sides of her character, so sorry in advance to all the tally stands out there.
I am going to die.
Jack is an incredibly broken and troubled character. Leading up to her time aboard the Normandy with Shepard, her life has been a constant of pain and suffering. Psychologically tortured and manipulated to love the thrill of killing, Jack had her wires crossed from the very start. Not only that, but as soon as she leaves her captors, she's immediately met by horrible people who use her and throw her away like nothing. Every step of the way, Jack is met with the worst of the galaxy who use her and throw her away time and time again. She is always on the edge and looking for the time when her quote-unquote friends are going to betray her. Upon Shepard's first one-on-one conversation with Jack, we can glean a pretty good idea about her mental state and her beliefs. Jack is obsessed with the past and has a refusal to move on from it. This is apparent in many instances, specifically her tattoos. Jack states that some of her tattoos are from prisons she's been in, some for memorable kills, some for personal reasons, and some are because why the f not. She even says that her haircut was from the cult she once ran with. Also, in case you hadn't noticed, Jack doesn't wear a lot of clothes. This is her way of disarming people. She believes that nearly everybody just wants to use her for sex and throw her away. So she uses her lack of clothes as a way to see people's true intentions. Even Kelly picks up on this when she tells Shepard,
"She pushes people away, yet approaches sex casually. I don't think she understands her own motivations. I wouldn't be surprised if she makes advances on you. If you want her respect, think twice."
Every piece of her body is symbolic of the past. She keeps the tattoos and the haircut as a way to remember never trust anyone. While some people have scars, she, being an all-powerful biotic, doesn't. Her scars are represented in her tattoos. Each one tells a story that she doesn't want to forget. Jack is stuck in the past, and her tattoos are a constant that keeps her in the mindset of kill or be killed. On the topic of death, Jack has a total desensitization towards death, killing, and crime. This makes total sense when you take into account her childhood. Cerberus gave Jack a Pavlovian response towards killing. For those who are unaware, a Pavlovian response, or classical conditioning, is defined as two stimuli linked together to produce a new learned response in a person and/or animal. In Jack's case, her potent stimulus is a euphoric feeling from narcotics paired with a previously neutral stimulus, killing. While most people would be apprehensive and regretful from killing, whenever Jack kills, she has a Pavlovian response and associates the feeling with utter bliss. This bliss has made her desensitized towards a lot of negative aspects of life. She kills without a second thought because, in her mind,
I figure every time someone dies and it's not me, my chances of survival go up.
she even believes it to be easier in a hostage situation to kill the hostage to make things quote-unquote simpler. Jack has an utter disregard towards death. It is as simple as an on-off switch for her. This presents her next flaw, a no-regrets mentality, or simply put, narcissism. Individuals who typically lean towards a no-regrets mentality are more often than not narcissists. They're the ones who typically say, I don't give a fuck about anything, fuck you. Because giving a fuck about something will mean they have to accept accountability for their actions. But why accept accountability when you could just blame someone else? While we currently do not know what causes an individual to become a narcissist, it has been theorized that, quote, biologically vulnerable children, parenting styles that are overprotective or neglectful may have an impact. The following is a list of a few complications typically associated with narcissistic personality disorder: relationship difficulties, anxiety, drug and alcohol misuse, and destructive thoughts or behavior. Sound familiar? When questioned about if she could have done things differently, Jack replies with a flat no, and that
There's no reason I should be alive, but I am. You know why? Instinct. It's worked for me so far, and I'm not gonna change.
she would later go on to say that she gets feelings and doesn't need proof, and that she always does the smart thing when people try to fuck with her. What's really interesting is when you combine her no-regrets mentality, desensitization towards death, and obsession over the past, you get to the true root of Jack's mental anguish. All she truly wants is a family, and to be accepted. However, she pushes everyone away in fear that they will use her and throw her away like everybody else has in her entire life. Jack believes relationships of any kind are a waste of time and never work. This is because everyone uses her. Whether it's for sex, destruction, crime, what have you, everybody she's ever known has used her. All except one. At some point in Jack's life, Jack met and fell in love with a man named Murtaugh. They ran multiple jobs together until one day, after robbing a heavily guarded weapons frigate, they got separated. Murtaugh had a choice: take the score and leave, or come back and save Jack. He chose the latter. Jack eventually made it to a shuttle and escaped, but Murtaugh was left behind. A few days later, the shuttle plays a message from Murtaugh that was set to play if he hadn't checked in. In his last message, he tells Jack about the future they were supposed to have and how much he loves her. But what's interesting, despite the fact that Jack denies that she believes it's her fault that he died and tells Shepard that he did it to himself, you feel, you get sloppy. It's that damn simple. He found out. Jack still demonstrates signs associated with survivor's guilt. As the name suggests, survivor's guilt is a guilt that develops in people who have survived a life-threatening situation. Survivor's guilt symptoms are typically associated with irritability, angry outbursts, and obsessive thoughts. Jack desperately wants a family and to be loved and cared for, but her past traumas and experiences caused her to push everyone away abrasively, almost instinctively. Her quote about the nature of relationships pretty much sums this all up.
You let someone get that close, it just means they need a shorter knife. Lonely and alive works just fine, thanks.
As Shepard begins to talk more and more with Jack, she interprets this to mean he just wants to have sex with her. If Shepard agrees and the two do the old hanky-panky, then Jack will refuse to talk to Shepard anymore, telling him that there's nothing to talk about anytime a conversation is attempted. If Shepard accepts her advances, then he does exactly what she thought he would do, and the trust is broken. If Shepard doesn't accept her advances, then Jack is visibly confused and thus begins the softening of her shell. As Shepard makes non-sexual advances towards Jack and shows that he genuinely wants to get to know her, a crack in her armor forms. After many conversations, Jack eventually decides she wants to move on and evolve from her past. In her hyper-violent mind, the only way to do so is with violence. Therefore, she wants to blow up the facility that made her, to literally wipe the slate clean. So Shepard takes Jack back to the Telton facility on Pragia with a bomb in tow. Once there, Jack finds another surviving subject, Aresh. For the first time in her life, Jack is faced with a dark reflection of herself. Aresh is someone, like her, stuck in the past. However, unlike Jack, Aresh wants to restart the facility and understand why they tortured them as kids in order to apply some sort of meaning to all the pain they all suffered. When Jack wants to kill Aresh, Shepard can tell her,
Jack, he's trapped in his past. You need to move on from yours.
He wants to restart this place. He needs to die.
He's crazy, and he's never gonna restart this facility. You have to let it go. Your past doesn't have to control you.
This finally gives Jack a revelation. By letting Aresha live, destroying the facility, and not choosing violence, Jack begins the extremely difficult and daunting task of truly changing herself. Jack herself admits later to Shepard that Aresh was trapped in the past, reliving it every day. He showed her that could have been her, and she's not getting stuck like that. After the destruction of the Telton facility and her realization of the need for her to move on, Jack slowly begins to soften up. As the relationship progresses and Shepard shows her more genuine interest in her well-being and doesn't just want to use her for sex, she can't understand it. But by showing her time and time again that he can be trusted and his intentions are true, she states,
It's just gonna hurt, or you'll mess around, or I'll end up killing you or something. And that sucks.
Despite everything she's been through, if Shepard keeps emotionally supporting Jack, a relationship will eventually form, where she finally admits to him that he was right and that she really does need someone. At this moment, Jack realizes that her mentality of no regrets and lonely and alive is actually incorrect, and she finally drops her barriers to fully accept Shepard and open her heart once again. In what is typically a sex scene for most, if not all, romance options in every Mass Effect game, here they only kiss and lie in bed together as Shepard holds her, once again demonstrating to her that he's there for her emotionally, not just physically, which in her mind means the world. Then she dies. Nah, I'm just kidding. That would be f***ed up though. Following the destruction of the Collector base and the end of Mass Effect 2, Shepard turns himself over to the Systems Alliance, the human governing body of the Mass Effect universe, after destroying an entire star system to halt the invasion of the galaxy-destroying Reapers. This results in Jack, once again, being left alone. This time, however, for a different reason. Jack is approached by the Alliance and offered a teaching position at the Grissom Academy to train biotic children. The Grissom Academy, mind you, is essentially the Telton facility if it was run by actually good people. Jack accepts and essentially is gifted the ability to be the positive figure for kids that she never had growing up. During her time away from Shepard, Jack now wears slightly more clothes and begins to grow her hair, both of which are examples of her finally moving on from her past. Not only that, but the Alliance wants to use her students as biotic artillery against the oncoming Reaper invasion. However, Jack thinks they'd be better off as support, which also goes to show that her violent tendencies have wavered. The Jack of the past would have loved to have command of a bunch of all-powerful biotics causing destruction across worlds, but now, after Shepard helped her move on from the past, she chooses the defensive option, the protective option. Later, after Shepard is reunited with her, Jack mentions that some of Shepard's attitude rubbed off on her, that she never had a family and that her students and Shepard are the closest thing she's ever had to one. She even begrudgingly admits to Shepard that maybe your little Suicide Squad taught me something about teamwork. As Mass Effect 3 progresses and the galaxy-spanning Reaper War rages on, Jack and Shepard are separated once again, this time because of their mutual duties. Shepard is racing against the clock to find a way to stop the Reapers from killing all organic life in the galaxy, and Jack is on the front lines with her students providing support from the Reaper attacks. At one point, they both get shore leave and meet at a bar where Jack temporarily reverts to her old self when doubt creeps in.
They've saved a lot of lives. That's what pisses me off. We're doing good work. If we were useless, I could drop this shit and come with you. But we're not. And they need me. So, if we gotta call it quits, I get it.
You're not getting rid of me that easy.
But, once again, Shepard won't leave her and tells her he's not going anywhere. Later, to show her appreciation and love for Shepard, she surprises him with the one thing extremely personal to her: tattoos. When asked if she'd ever given a tattoo to anyone else before, she says nobody else mattered enough, and then tattoos a smaller version of her back tattoo onto Shepard's right shoulder blade. She then confesses that the reason why she's giving him one now is so that she can identify him in case
So that if
he's
you're
ever
ever hurt, barely breathing, lying under a pile of rubble at the ass end of this war.
Hey. You worry too much.
Jack, finally, for the first time in her entire life, has happiness. She has a family, and not only her students, but in Shepard and those she fought alongside against the Collectors. This, for all intents and purposes, concludes Jack's arc from Mass Effect. Jack was this damaged, psychotic, biotic criminal that, at the end of the day, learned she's stronger than her past. Despite all of the turmoil and pain she suffered throughout her entire life, Shepard, and really her time aboard the Normandy, really showed her for the first time that there is actually hope. In the end, Jack realizes just how damaged she truly is, and she herself made the effort to change. Because the only way to truly change is if you yourself understand why and make the effort to do so. Jack finally does and moves past her temper, her obsession over the past, her desensitization towards death, and her narcissism, and finally finds the real family she's been seeking for all these years. Thank you all for watching.